Alright, now we're going to go over how to lubricate your firearm. I actually use oil and grease. One of the things that I use that I really like is this Rig Universal gun grease. This is really good stuff. This is a big container of it. Most of you will not need this your entire life. I've only used this much. I've had this about a year now, and I've cleaned a lot of firearms, and I've cleaned them a bunch. So this lasts a long time. And I'll show you the oil here in a minute. But I'm going to show you how to I grease it first. We will go and we will grease the slide. What we're going to do is we're just going to get a little bit. It's not a whole lot of grease. This is a little too much for me right there, but we're going to spread it so it'll be alright. We're going to go into this channel. If you can see the channel right in here, I'm going to put it all in this channel. Take that grease and just spread it all through that channel. We don't want grease just hanging off the sides, so make sure we get it. I'm also going to get the sides right here. This is where the slide runs back and forth on the frame. I'm going to get all of this, and you can actually see a little, if you can see that, see a little bit of wear right here. See if I can zoom in on that. There you go, maybe you can see that. So we can see a little wear right there. So I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. I'm going to go down in that channel. This is a little felt type tip. You can get this in the paint departments of most of your hobby shops. I'm not sure what it's called, but I saw it and I was like, oh, that would work perfect for cleaning or greasing up my firearms. Again, I'm going to get it along this side right here, down in there, right in here. Okay, now I'm going to take this. And if you can see the wear right here, see how well you can see that wear right in here. You know something slides along this, so I'm going to put some grease down on it. And you can take your fingers, put your grease on it, get it up with you. There you go, just like that. Now you can also, the barrel slides in and out right here. So I'm going to put a little bit of grease down in there. Again, you don't want so much hanging out. You've got globs just showing. So you want to kind of smooth that down. But as far as grease is concerned, put a little bit right there. That should be good to go. That's all the grease it takes on that. We don't grease this, we're going to oil that. Now we do grease parts on here. Again, if you can see, this slides with the slide, so this rubs up against. This has a lot of rubbing action. Okay, so I'm going to grease this. I'm going to grease down in here. I don't want big globs, so I'm going to pull that glob off. You can move it with your finger. It does not take a lot. Alright, we're going to go back to this one. I did miss a spot. So we're going to go back to this one. We're going to put grease right here. This part you can just kind of dab your finger in it. I have a lot of students that come into class that actually bring their firearms in and they're dripping with oil, and you don't want that. We don't want it dripping so much oil in it that it's just dripping with oil. We want it oiled and lube, but we don't want it dripping with oil and lube. Alright, we get a little bit of grease down in here. This is part of your trigger. And this is part of the trigger on this one. This is part of the double action. This is a single double action. If it doesn't fire the first time, it goes into double action. This is part of it right here. And right in there you can see where there's some rubbing right here, where it rubs right there. Now you can use grease only, or you can use oil only. I use both, but you don't have to use both. For the most part, that's about all the grease I'm going to put on it. That's all it takes. That's the real hard parts that are rubbing with grease. So now we're going to go to the oil. And the oil I use, and I highly suggest this oil, there's plenty out there, you can use what you want, but this is what we call FMO 350 AW sprays from Lubricating. This is a really good oil. It was designed for the food industry. They can't open their machines up while they're doing the food, processing the food. So they spray this grease down in the gears and stuff of the machine, and it kind of works its way down through there. And it has a really good film. So I highly suggest this. Now, another thing I use with oil is I use a paintbrush. It does not take a lot of oil. So we can spray it. Just a little bit of oil. Then I'm just going to take this paintbrush. And the reason I oil down in here is the spring moves back and forth on it, so I want some oil on it. Is it necessary? I'm not sure, but I do like it on there. The one part that I would suggest, if ain't nothing else, is oil in here, because this moves in and out of this other part. So I'm going to put it a little heavier, but I'm still going to take my paintbrush and I'm going to spread it. Again, I don't want this oil dripping. So I'm going to spread that right there. That's about all I need to do with that. So I'm going to set that to the side. Clean my hands off. I don't want a lot of oil on the outside of any of this. Now this part, this is not going to take a bunch of oil at all. I'm going to put a little bit down here where the firing pin is. I'm going to overdo it because I'm going to take this. I like coating my firearm, all the other spots that don't have oil on them. Not necessarily to aid in the functioning of the gun, but I want to keep it from corroding or rusting or whatever else. I want a little coating on it. So you can see I've just got a little thin coating. It's not dripping, it's not wet, it's a thin coating, very, very thin. That's all it takes. Now I am going to put a little bit more down here where my firing pin is. If you can see that hole right there, I'm going to put it just a little bit. That's not a lot. And then I'm going to actuate the firing pin. If you can see it going down in there, that's what I want. So I can actuate the firing pin with my thumb. Now I'm going to take again my paintbrush and I'm going to get a little bit of oil right in here where I didn't get a while ago. This part right here, this is part of your safety. Actuate that, let some of that oil get down in there. Now I know that everything's functioning properly. I've got a good coating of oil. This is actually kind of an oily grease. It picked up some of the grease and that's fine. No harm to it. That's what we want right there. That looks good. Again, it's not dripping. It's oiled, but it's not dripping. And that's what we're looking for. Alright, wipe my fingers back off. I don't want to get all the oil on the outside of here. Now, with this, if you see this spring right in here, see if I can get it where you see there's a little spring right in there. And there's places I can't get to down in here, and there's places I can't get to down in here with my paintbrush. So I'm going to put it where that spring's at. Just put a little bit of oil right there. And go down in here. Put a little bit, I can barely see it, that's what I want. Then I'm going to go right here. Alright, now that should have enough oil that stayed up with it to where I can take my paintbrush and I can oil all these other little parts. See, they're getting oil all over them now. That's what I want. I just like covering everything that I can see with either oil or grease, especially metal parts. Spread that out a little bit right there and right here. And that's about it. Now one thing I do want to do is this little feed ramp right here. I'm going to clean it back off. I don't want a lot of oil or grease on it. It's one thing you don't want. You don't want oil and grease on your feed ramps. I'll bring this over here and make sure there's no oil and grease on there, and there's not. And that's pretty much it for oiling your firearm. That's all it takes. You don't want stuff dripping. I'll have students come in and there'll be just oil just oozing down the trigger or just oozing out from under the slide, just get all over the place. We don't want that. It takes just a little bit of oil, and then you take a rag and wipe stuff like that off, or your finger, it doesn't matter. But that's what we want. We don't want a whole lot of oil on these things. It doesn't take a whole lot. Alright, on the next segment I'm going to put the firearm back together, so check that one out.